welcome to EWTN's Bookmark. I'm Doug Keck, your host. Our guest is Father Gabriel Gillen, OP. We're talking about the book Vision of Fatima, which was written by Father Thomas McGlynn, OP, and it's published by Sophia Press. And welcome so much, Father.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, you're too young to be the original author, obviously.
This is about as close as I'm going to get to be on the show with my own book.
Yeah, that's right. So we've got Vision of Fatima, Father Thomas McGlynn. Now, this was a book that is being reprinted and re-put out, right?
That's right.
By Sophia in the year, the 100th anniversary year, perfect timing. Who was Father Thomas McGlynn, and why should we care?
Sure. So Father Thomas McGlynn was a sculptor, and he was very gifted. At the age of 4, he did his first sculpture, and then they realized he was very talented, and he went off to Catholic University of America, had in his sophomore year a calling towards the priesthood, and stopped his plans of being a sculptor, became a Dominican friar, was ordained in 1932. And then years later, he was commissioned to start doing statues again because they realized how gifted he was. And one of the statues he was commissioned to do was Our Lady of Fatima. And after he completed it, somebody suggested, why don't you go over to Portugal and to meet with Sister Lucia, the
Who was
last,
still alive
who
at
was
the
still
time.
alive,
Right.
And this is in the 1940s,
42,
47, he went over there.
Okay.
Went over there in 1947, and he showed her the statue,
Right.
and she didn't like it.
Well, that's interesting. When he did the first version he did, what did he model it after? The one that had been done before?
No, he was really doing it off of descriptive accounts of the visions from different from the 3 visionaries, and based on that, it was a pretty good description. I mean, it was, you know, it was pretty traditional in its form, and it looked very nice. He was very proud of it, so he was, you know, wanted to show it to her, and the first words out of her mouth was, "Well, the hands are all incorrect," and then she went on and on describing what was wrong with it.
Right.
So then, in the end, he decided to stay there with the bishop's permission and the Mother Superior's permission.
Right.
And for 7 days, he worked with her in studio in the convent, and for hours a day, and just completed this new statue of Our Lady of Fatima.
Right, and though the pictures aren't in the book, there's a website you can go see some of the pictures with Sister standing next to the statue, and then the large statue that was done later, right?
That's right,
As well.
visionoffatima.org. Under Vision of Fatima, you can see all the statues, and you can see the one that's in Portugal, because, yeah, he did several versions of it, and one huge one is above the basilica today in Fatima itself.
Right, one of the things that's interesting, too, and I guess why this kind of perked his interest, and then going into after the 40s. I was thinking because I knew 1942 was when they released the information about Fatima and elaborated on some of the things that people didn't know about, like the other visitations of Our Lady to Lucia, as well as the fact about the Angel of Portugal having shown up in 1916, which
The year
people
before, that's right.
really had not known at the time that had occurred, and it makes sense that it would have been after the war that something would have been happening like this. Now, his father was an actor. Okay?
His father, Frank, was an actor, originally a lawyer out in California, and then went into acting, realized law was not for him, and was a very successful actor, and played Abraham Lincoln in a popular play in New York City and Broadway.
Okay.
And you know, and then the family had some artistic leanings and did some film work too.
Right. And you also do some of that as well. I know you're a Long Island boy, so I have to throw that in there.
Shout
You're out of New York, but
and I was a college chaplain at NYU, and I started working with the film students, and then we started producing documentaries, which EWTN has aired on about 7 of them so far.
Now, is there a connection between this kind of artistic and the theater aspect and your particular province or your group of Dominicans?
Well, you know, there's always in different provinces, there's been some very gifted. We had Fra Angelico, and there's always been a great emphasis. Some people are scientists. We have about 3 or 4 scientists in our province. Some are artists. So there's been always an appreciation for the arts, and McGlynn, Father Thomas McGlynn, was very gifted as an artist, but he says it in the book as well, he wasn't insisting that he, you know, become a full-time artist, which he did later on. Eventually, after serving, he worked with death row inmates in Louisiana.
Right.
He was up in Chicago, worked in inner cities, was involved with the civil rights movement in Chicago. In any event, he then began teaching at Providence College in 1946 and was a professor most of his life at Providence College.
So he was a friar then?
He was a friar.
Friar
That's
up
right.
in Providence.
That's right.
Now, with that being the case, was he a later vocation in what he decided to do? And do you have a fair amount of late vocations?
Yeah, he went to college at the age of 16,
Okay.
and he decided, even though he graduated college early, to go right from college, from Catholic University of America, into the Dominicans. He met a Dominican friar. He was thinking about the Franciscans.
Did the Dominicans have a house there at Catholic U at the time?
They did, and it's still there
now,
today, and
right.
it's full. It's jam-packed, thankfully, and. But he went right into the priesthood. We do have some late vocations, but it tends to be coming in earlier. The average age is dropping each year, so we have a lot of young guys joining the order. And the House of Studies, where Father Tom McGlynn studied and where he was ordained at St. Dominic's in Washington, D.C., they're thriving. They're doing really well.
So when Father McGlynn went over and he started dealing with Sister and he showed her the statue, the thing, and I know that we have a picture we can show, my first question was, well, if she didn't like what he did, what did they have before that? And you actually see what the original statue that was done, which looks quite different than the final version, not only that he did, but that she agreed was correct.
Yes, and the main point was, if anything was off, like he had some of our Blessed Mothers, through her veil, some of her hair showing, coming down off her shoulders, and then the arm positions were incorrect. And he had symbolic meanings with the rosary and the way she was
There's a star,
positioning.
maybe, where the star was.
There was a star. There was also a cord with a globe of light, and then everything about the description changed the way he did the final statue under her direction. He worked with her. He actually said, this is the only piece of art that he did where he really did it with somebody else. And Sister Lucia really directed him. He was just the instrument. Right. So he said, he doesn't take credit for creating this. He says, I'm really just an instrument in her hands, as she described exactly what she experienced during the vision of Fatima.
Now, there's a large statue that then was based on that, which was done later. What, the bishop asked for that to be done?
The bishop asked for that, and it's made out of marble. He went to Italy to a rock quarry to create this huge slab of marbles, which was then pulled down out of the mountain, and it took a longer time to produce that. That took a couple of years to finally get produced, and that statue today is above the main basilica in Fatima. And part of the other things that were different from the original statue was the Immaculate Heart of Mary with the crown of thorns was always appeared on the outside during the vision. Sister Lucia could actually see it, and so he put that there. There was a star, there was a globe, and then there was a simplicity about this light. She had this tremendous white light, and then there was some yellow light around her garments. So he portrayed that in the new statue.
Was he surprised at her ability to recount that kind of detail?
Yeah, she was very exact, and if she couldn't recall anything, she would say it. But one of the other things was that, she wasn't on a cloud. Sister Lucia, when she was looking at the Blessed Mother, said her feet were on the trees, on the tree, the leaves of the tree where she appeared. So he just wanted to make it exact as he wanted, as it could be. And he realized, you can have artistic interpretation, but why do that? Right. He wanted this to be unique, and he thought it was very providential the way he started to work with Sister Lucia.
Portuguese?
He didn't. He had an interpreter. He had one of the ladies one of the sisters spoke English, was from Ireland. Okay. And acted as an interpreter.
As an interpreter. Yeah, because elsewhere in the book, because you not only talk about his experience, but you do talk about, in the book, he talks about the vision itself, some of the people he talked to later on, which was interesting because he gets to meet people who were there in the miracle of the sun or other experiences. And I was thinking about what you said. There was one where the people talk about where they could see the branch of the tree drop down, like she's describing, that Our Lady was actually standing on it, and they could see that go down. Or the doves. And seeing the doves drinking water off of what would have been where Our Lady was.
That's right. So people, had different experiences, but there was always something miraculous happening, and he wanted to interview as many people. So he interviewed people that were healed, people that actually saw the miracle of the sun in 1917. And he knew there were already accounts of this, but he thought it important, and he began corresponding with Sister Lucia afterwards. So they kept up this letter correspondence, and she knew he was writing this book, Vision of Fatima, and she asked for certain things to be explained, and she really wanted the message spread. And in 1947...
So did she see the final version of the book then?
She didn't, but she just asked him to make sure certain things were portrayed. And in 1947 in the United States, Fatima, the message, wasn't very well known, and this book originally was very popular and sold out, and then went out of print years later. So for the 100th anniversary, EWTN's doing such a great job. We realized that it would be good to get this book republished, so Sophia Press.
Right. Well, obviously, Our Lady of Fatima, the powerful apparition. Personally, I'll say it's my favorite, and I've always had a liking for Jacinta. I always liked her kind of approach to the faith.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. I mean, it's such a unique story. It stayed with him his whole life, even in his 60s. At age 61, he, as a penance for the world and for the conversion of sinners, he walked all the way from Rome to Portugal.
Now, did you mention to me before the show that also tied into Roe versus Wade?
Yeah, he was very upset with the way the people were moving in a pro-abortion type legislation, and in the United States, he was very upset with that, and he remained that way throughout. He died in 1977. And as a penance, he walked really from Rome 3 months. It took him 3 months. He walked with his nephew. That's about 3 times the length of the El Camino, which a lot of people do in Spain.
Do these days, right? Now, he talked to several people who were there during the miracle of the sun. And he basically says how that the sun appeared to detach itself from the sky, come to earth. The multitude fell on its knees weeping. He said virtually everyone who talked to had that experience. It was a very consistent, exactly what happened. Talks about the different colors being red, white, blue, and orange. It's interesting, though, also because he did also talk about an individual who was there who saw the clouds part but didn't see the sun.
Yes, and I've talked to people who the saints perceive things in different ways, and there's God's communicating to us in a certain way, and things are received according to the mode of the receiver, so to speak, and there's a reason why people describe things slightly different, but nonetheless they all had this interior conversion through the process. And really the outward signs are really just to lead you to believe in the message. And Father McGlynn points this out, and Sister Lucia mentioned it as well. The miracles, which are pretty substantial and taken together, they have this credibility. You see this convergence of evidence. It's really to convince you about the importance of the message. And so, yeah, we don't get caught up in the sensationalism of these miracles, and they do happen. It's like Christ performed all these miracles. Every miracle that Christ performed was temporary. Those people, Lazarus died again, Jairus' daughter died again.
There are no permanent cures.
Except for the resurrection, which he promises everybody. Everybody will get this permanent miracle of the resurrection. But in order for them to have that happen, there's certain people that need to take up a cross for the conversion of others. And I was giving a homily this morning. The venom becomes the anti-venom. The virus becomes the vaccine. When you take on with Christ, when you take on suffering, you can transform it into healing. And I was just giving a homily about how venom itself, you give venom to a lamb. It has an immune response. It starts fighting it. That's what creates the anti-venom. And that was only discovered 100 years ago. So we can unite our sufferings. This is the message of Fatima. Give to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, give to Jesus, the Lamb of God, your sufferings. He'll take the venoms in your life and transform them into healing for other people. And that's what Our Lady is asking for.
And why do you think here it's in the 100th anniversary year, why do you think that's such an important message today, or is it? Because a lot of people, I would say, coming out of the 60s and the 70s, a lot of these kinds of things, they weren't put down, they were just put away. Because modern man, you'd look at these and say, oh, well, it's nice that Sister Lucia shows up in 1942 telling us she knew that Our Lady projected that the war was going to happen. Well, it wouldn't have been hard to predict in 1942. I think maybe Cardinal Spellman said that, of fame from New York, who I even remember growing up as a kid, as a power broker inside the church. But, so how does that play with people today? Is it different?
It is, because there's a lot of people that we see the nuns, the NONEs, are rising at a rapid rate. This is one of the biggest challenges we have in the United States and throughout the world. It's just not people falling into nihilistic thought, but people are just really not even looking. So God does provide miracles, and it happens all the time. And this message of Fatima, I think we're going to see it more and more come out, where you know, when you look at anything, you can't prove anything always empirically, but there's a convergence of evidence. And when you look at all the evidence, it's pretty credible versus not believing it, especially with the message of Fatima. So I think today it's deeply needed, and for believers as well, it's deeply needed, because again, what Our Lady is asking for is, listen, there are people that are in danger, there are people that are in over their heads, they're in danger of drowning. We need people to go out and rescue them. And the way you do that is, again, taking on a penance, a cross. You don't have to go looking for it. It happens in your own life. And realize God can transform that suffering to help to turn into healing for somebody else.
Right, in a sense, the rosary, you grab the end of the rosary, help pull you out of that drowning situation.
That's right. And this communion, First Saturday's devotion is very popular. The fifth successor,
which sometimes people don't realize came out of the Fatima apparition.
Came out of the Fatima apparition, but we put in the book Blessed Humbert of Romans, who was a Dominican friar from the beginning ages of the Dominicans almost 700 years ago. He was the fifth successor of St. Dominic. Blessed Humbert talked in a homily about Saturday's devotions and how important that is, how Friday is the Passion, Sunday is the resurrection, and Mary is the Sabbath, and the time in between the two, and we need that time.
I thought the Jesuits were the only ones who claimed everything in the church came from that. I didn't realize the Dominicans were doing that as well.
Well, it was never translated into English, so one of our fellow Dominicans, Father Albert Trudell, translated from the original Latin, found this old, very old homily of Blessed Humbert, and it talks about the first Saturday's devotion, which, again, our Blessed Mother in any of the church-approved apparitions is never saying anything new.
There's nothing new.
There's nothing new.
Under the sun,
under the sun, as
the miracle
Scripture
of the
says.
sun, even. But that whole idea,
That's right.
it's really a restatement of the truth, because the truth doesn't change.
That's right.
What's your take on the idea that, you know, I think about when Our Lady appeared and Francisco could see her but couldn't hear her.
Yes.
Okay, and then the story of that one woman, particularly, who could see the clouds but didn't see the sun.
Yes.
How do you react to that?
Yeah,
Does it have something to do with that individual? In Francisco's case, it did have to do with his state in life, because Our Lady said he needed to pray more rosaries.
Yes.
And after he did that, he was able to
a couple of things, though, but they were assured of, you know, and we're all assured of this. This is the beautiful message of Fatima. It can be scary if, on first glance.
Especially if you think about the vision of hell.
Yes, which is part of
the children were told, no, you're going to heaven before they showed.
Yes.
They saw.
Yes, and we are all given that assurance. If we follow the first Saturday's devotions, we are assured of that through the life of grace, that we're going to, we will not enter into damnation, but at the same time, we're given this certitude. Our Lady came to give us certitude that, listen, we're all we're all in over our heads here. Right. We need God's grace. You know, we have to be humble enough. Even if you're an ocean swimmer, even if you're an Olympic swimmer, swimming across the Atlantic is a huge challenge. Nobody can do it on their own. You need God's grace. In a sense, Our Lady is reminding us that we all need God's grace, and we all need. And the other thing is, getting back to Francisco, even in the life of Christ, people walk right by Christ. People listened to him. Some people followed him. Others didn't. So even when Christ was present, human beings, for various reasons, didn't pick up on what was right there.
Right.
And grace builds on nature, and what our job is to make sure that we just present the truth and live the gospel ourselves, and make supplication for those
build on the
who need
openness
help.
of others.
And build on the
openness. If you can
openness.
get people to start to be open, the truth attracts.
Yeah, it can attract. And the other thing is, even if it doesn't attract, we can still pull people to shore that are in over their heads. We have to be lifeguards, so to speak. We have to help pull others towards shore.
You grew up in Rockaway Beach.
I was a lifeguard, ocean lifeguard for 6 years, and sometimes you had to pull somebody to shore who didn't want to come to shore. And really, that's what Christ does. All the disciples, failed him. Only John was by the cross.
You ever get caught in a riptide?
Oh yes, that's right. And you have to
swim to the side.
Swim to the side and work with that, and also you have to be humble. You have to make sure you don't go beyond your means
to do it. Right. I can swim out of this. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly. That pride, that hubris is certainly your downfall.
Now let's go back to the statue itself that Father McGlynn worked on. So is the Pilgrim Virgin statue that we see, that people, it's a devotion, people will bring it to the house, and
Yes.
obviously the statue even went around the United States and around the world, and this year certainly was even here in Alabama. Is that the statue he made?
No. It's not. So it's a lesser known statue. In New York, you can see one at St. Vincent Ferrer in New York City.
Okay.
And you can see a much larger version of it in Portugal above the basilica
But does it
itself.
look the same or does it look different?
Those two are the same.
Okay.
They're exactly the same.
So that's the one that she signed off
That's the one she signed off on. And to be fair, she even said she had very positive things to say about this statue, but all depictions are going to fail.
Well, it's like St. Faustina said about the
Divine Mercy image.
Picture,
That's correct.
How do you capture this unbelievable?
Exactly. But there's something about it. When I look, when I'm celebrating Mass, I can see this statue of Our Lady of Fatima every time I elevate the host and the chalice of our Lord. And it's really, the more you read about this and you pray about it, there is something very special. All different devotions can lead you to see another facet of God's grace, and this one certainly does that.
How did his interaction with her, if you know, impact his priesthood?
It really impacted it tremendously. He even said the first statue is kind of a symbol of his whole approach towards Fatima. You kind of want to bring your own interpretations to it. And he realized he was wrong. And he realized that Fatima has a disturbing message to a certain degree, but at the end, the more he studied it, then the more he fell in love with it and was not scared of it at all and realized it's an important mission. So it really stayed with him his whole life, and it deepened he always had a great devotion to our Blessed Mother, but it really had a strong effect on him. Again, even at 60 years old, to walk 1,500 miles is no small feat, and just a testament of how it deeply affected him.
Now, he died before the publication of The Third Secret, right?
Yeah, he died in 1977.
Okay, so
yeah,
if we think in terms of it being with
right
John
before,
Paul,
that's right before
that when that came out. So at the time, and even the book he talks about the two secrets.
That's right.
In here, and any take on what his take might have been on The Third Secret? Did he ever ask her about it? Did we even know?
Yeah, he interviewed
Was he
her.
aware of it?
He interviewed her 3 times, and there's certain things that are mentioned, but she definitely did not broach what we do know now that was released. But she did even say that she, had her own notes on this, and that she gave it to the bishop, and for whatever reason, the bishops decided not to release everything, but then obviously was under John Paul II. Now, the interesting thing is we're talking about the Third Secret being released under St. John Paul II. He was shot on the feast day of Our Lady of Fatima, and he started to investigate it a lot more and realized that this was a message that had to get out. And she appeared under the title Our Lady of the Rosary. As Dominican friars, we're very attached to Our Lady of the Rosary. But not only that, I asked the Vatican for a piece of John Paul II's sash when he was shot on the feast day of Our Lady of the Rosary, and we're putting that in the shrine in St. Vincent Ferrer.
And that's in New York.
Because we think John Paul II has a very strong role to play in spreading this message.
Well, it's also interesting because obviously the connection there with Russia, and you're dealing with somebody who really was involved with the fall of the Soviet Union.
More than anybody else, how he worked with President Ronald Reagan. And he also said with suffering itself, he has a beautiful letter, St. John Paul II, Salvifici Doloris, the Christian meaning of human suffering. And he said, human nature has free will. One finger pulled the trigger. That's evil. Another guided the bullet. He felt that Our Lady of Fatima guided the bullet and made sure that the evil intent didn't have the last word. Again, you have this transformation, light, darkness into light.
And the assassin also claimed that when he went to shoot it, his arm got moved.
That's right.
And he doesn't know how that happened.
That's right. But John Paul II...
And he was a trained assassin.
And John Paul II took on that suffering for the healing of others. And through that, that's our mission as well.
So how has this book affected your vision of Fatima?
It really gave me a greater devotion to the Rosary, and also wanting to spread the first Saturday devotions, and where you pray the Rosary and also meditate. So I'm starting to create Scripture Rosaries podcasts, and I want to create a video where we're getting more people to meditate on Saturdays on the mysteries of Christ's life,
And you deal with young people, and you're seeing a greater openness than
you're seeing a greater openness. I also run this Rosary Shrine of St. Jude, and it's grown from 5,000 people to 80,000 people.
Really?
We're trying to really promote the Rosary and other devotions.
Well, I like St. Jude.
St. Jude is fantastic.
St. Jude's very good. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much, Father.
Thank you, Doug.
Speaking here with Father Gabriel Gillen, OP, about the book Vision of Fatima, written by Father Thomas McGlynn, OP, published by our friends at Sophia Press, available through the EWTN Religious Catalog, EWTNRC.com, a book to get in this 100th anniversary year of Fatima. I'm Doug Keck. See you next time right here on EWTN's Bookmark.